Now joining me on the Oregon Man Clinics hotline to talk Oregon recruiting, I want to welcome in Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest of SI's Fan Nation and host of the Ducks Dish podcast. Max, first of all, spot-on prediction for you last week for the Colorado game. I wanted to start off by giving you some props on that, and thanks for being here again this week.
Appreciate it, Justin. Always good to be back talking some Duck recruiting with you, and no doubt a big win over Colorado that I think surprised a lot of people, but the Ducks were ready.
Well, it did not surprise you, and let's just jump right into the recruiting. Let's start off with five-star defensive lineman Tony Cumberland of the 2026 recruiting class. He was on campus for the Ducks' victory over Colorado and shortly afterwards committed to the Ducks. You got a chance to speak with him over the weekend to talk about his decision. What did you learn from your conversation with him, and how special of a player could he be a few years from now?
Yeah, he is a big name, obviously, in the 2026 recruiting class. Big-time pickup for the Ducks out of the state of Arizona. He's actually originally, Justin, from Columbus, Ohio. So I think that's kind of a cool little background tidbit for fans to know as they're getting up to speed with Tony Cumberland. But 6'5", 265 pounds, and he's only a sophomore in high school. So I think you can clearly see the upside in his game. Basically lived in the backfield as a true freshman. I think when I was doing the research, he had over 30 tackles for loss. And obviously it's a priority for Dan Lanning and the rest of this coaching staff to add some premier talent in the trenches, particularly on the defensive line. So the thing with Cumberland is that it is very early, so I think a lot of fans kind of look at this one on the surface and they say, Max, like, why am I getting excited about this? There's still so long to go. But one of the things that I found out from my conversation with him is that he's actually planning to reclassify to the 2025 recruiting class, which I think is a really significant development, assuming that it goes through. This is a young guy. He's only 16, but the trajectory is more than promising. And if he were to join Oregon's 2025 class, I mean, that would just be a big-time win. Not only are you getting him a year earlier, but if you're just looking at the way this class is shaping up right now, they already have 4 commits in the 2025 class, and that has them at number 5 in the nation, according to the 247 Sports rankings. So if you can add Tony Cumberland to your 2025 class, I think that's huge. We know that the state of Arizona is continuing to be a priority for this coaching staff. Signed a trio of guys there from the 23 class, and you got a couple in Luke Moga and Jackson Jones in the 2024 class from the Grand Canyon State. So big-time addition for the Ducks, and you check that 5-star box, right? A lot of fans are excited about that, but big-time addition for the Ducks, and you might even get them a year early.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that development going forward. And one of the reasons why is because there's been a number of true freshmen. Obviously, that's 2025, but number of true freshmen in this class in particular, guys like Mateo Uyunglele, Tatum Tuioti, Blake Purchase, a couple of running backs, Dante Dowdell and Jaden Lamar, getting legitimate time, making an impact for this team. What were those guys' recruiting profiles like, and did you expect them to be players that could make an impact early on in their career?
Yeah, I want to focus on a couple of those guys you mentioned, Justin. Mateo Uyunglele was definitely the biggest name of the bunch from that class, and I definitely took an interest in him once I moved out to Southern California. Spent a bunch of time around the St. John Bosco program where the Ducks found him, and this was a huge name. This was the guy that I kind of thought I wrote, in fact, after he committed. This is the caliber of guy that you bring Dan Lanning, Tosh Lapointe to Oregon to go out and recruit. You land him over a team like Ohio State, a team like USC, the hometown school, right? And he is delivering at a super high level early on, almost immediately, you could say. And I think it's interesting to look at the development of him and a guy like Blake Purchase, the number 1 player out of Colorado that the Ducks signed in 2023. He's seen a heck of a lot of playing time, and he arrives, quote-unquote, late in the summer. So the fact that he is playing as many meaningful snaps that he is really just speaks to the caliber of player that he is and how quickly he's picked everything up. And that was a guy that the Ducks had to hold off a late surge from Deion Sanders in the Buffs to land. His national letter of intent came in a little bit later than people expected, and it's because Colorado was giving him a little bit to think about. So I feel like, especially after last weekend's game, they're super excited that they hung on to him. And then Calif is another standout guy that I think was incredibly underrated as a recruit, playing his high school ball a little bit in Nebraska when Tony Cumberland was there, and then transferred to Sheldon after Dan Lanning hired Tony Cumberland. So he kind of flew under the radar, I think, on a national level, and he's really making an impact early. So I think Mateo was the guy that you expected to play the most from that bunch, and I think he's really kind of ahead of schedule, especially when you compare him to that Kayvon Thibodeau arc, right? That was the last time they had a defensive lineman of this caliber. So if you're good enough, you're old enough. It's what Dan Lanning's been saying, and we're ultimately seeing it play out again. And you got to mention Sione Laulea as well, getting some time with the big dogs on that offensive line.
Yeah, certainly a number of guys that are making an immediate impact, and it's been exciting to watch if you're a Duck fan. So the Ducks added Tony Cumberland over the weekend. One of the next potential dominoes to fall for Oregon is 24/7's number one JUCO recruit, 6'4" cornerback. Hope I'm saying this name right. Sione Laulea III out of the College of San Mateo. He set a commitment date for October 8th. What do you think Duck fans should know about his situation?
Yeah, Sione Laulea is a huge target for Oregon in the 2024 class. Like you mentioned, he's coming out of the junior college ranks, and he's the best of the bunch. He's down to Oregon, Miami, and USC, and he's set to come off the board here in just a little under 2 weeks. So I think that Oregon's in a great spot here. I actually just I logged my prediction for Oregon to be the call when Laulea goes to make that commitment on October 8th. I think that the Ducks have just done a tremendous job in this recruiting process. I spoke to him after he took his official visit out to Eugene. He was pretty blatantly honest. He told me he wasn't really expecting a whole lot when he took that trip. Oregon's a flashy school, kind of the cliche stuff that we hear about Oregon from a lot of the doubters. But he got to Eugene, and, he built those connections and saw the development and kind of the trajectory of the program. And I think they really gave him something to think about here. So I think when you look at the relationships that he has with the coaching staff, Demetrius Martin's track record for development, Christian Gonzalez is in the NFL, right? He's a first-round pick, and Kyrie Jackson really looks like he's surging, and he's a 6'3" defensive back that's kind of in Laulea's mold. So I think when you see all of that, I feel like that kind of checks the box. And then he's from Tascopoy's native Bay Area, so I just find it hard to root against, but to see LaPoy not getting this guy. So I think Duck fans should know that he is someone that the Ducks would love to add in this 24 class. We already got a couple of high-end cornerback commitments from Dakota Fields and Ifeoma Badeglu, but I think that Laulea is a special guy. I think with a 6'4" frame and some speed and the ability to cover, that's just not something that you find super often. And I think that he would be a really big-time addition for them in this cycle.
So let's talk about some other guys in the 2024 class. We talked about 2023 and how those guys have been making an impact. Who are some guys in 2024 that you think potentially could make that same sort of impact?
Yeah, this class is obviously really strong so far. I think for me, when I'm looking at some of the guys that can make an immediate impact, I'm looking at the linebacker core. I love the haul that the Ducks have along the front seven. And one of the newest pledges, actually, Braden Platt, 2024 linebacker out of Washington. I think that he is one of those guys that could see the field early for Oregon at the linebacker spot, 6'2", 240, literally probably one of the freakiest athletes, Justin, honestly, in Oregon's 2024 recruiting class. He's an absolute stud on the football field, also plays running back and has home run speed for the Tornadoes out there in Yelm. And he's a track star doing events like javelin. And he's just a special talent. And I think that you may not need him to play right away, but he could be someone that is just hard to keep off the field once he ultimately gets to Eugene. And then you have Dylan Williams out of Long Beach Poly and Kamar Matudi out of Los Alamitos. Those are guys that are incredibly athletic. They're physical. They can play sideline to sideline, and that's really, I think, the box that Dan Lanning is trying to check with the linebackers in this class, because coverage hasn't been a strength for them. the past couple of seasons, and so far it looks like it is. So I think right now those linebackers are probably the group that you could say I'm almost the most excited about, but it's hard to choose.
Yeah, it certainly is hard to choose because it's going to be a fun class, and Dan Lanning has done a really good job bringing in his guys, and it feels like maybe this class and the 2024 class are going to be the first ones where we're going to really see what he wants to do. Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, of SI's Fan Nation, and the Ducks Dish podcast. As always, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me on, Justin.